Tip number 1. Go for the continent in which you have the most of troops. Exception is obviously Asia. Nobody will ever let you hold that continent. But don't overthink. Most of newbie players think that they can only win with Australia, while in reality it's not the case. If you fight for Australia with someone else, you're not only risking to lose towards your opponent, but even if you prevail in that fight, someone else could just take over Australia after you becoming weak. Tip number 2. So if you see that another player wants to fight with you for a continent, then just simply go for another continent. If you both fight for the same continent, then you could end up clearing out that continent for the third player. So in overall, either the continent will be wiped out for another player, or you will have 50% chance towards losing to your opponent and get eliminated from the game first. Tip number 3. Don't be in a rush to capture a continent if it is going to make you waste a lot of troops. A lot of new to the game players try to capture their continent as soon as possible, but by doing that, they end up having no troops to properly defend it, so then they get easily invaded without the ability to retaliate, or in some case someone even takes that continent from them. Tip number 4. So attack only one territory per turn to get a card unless needed otherwise. So for example, when you can capture a continent easily, you're making an elimination, or attacking another player when it's needed. Tip number 5. If you're clueless what to do, it's hard for you to capture a continent, or you do not have any good opportunity to do something good in general, then just build your troops to one big army. Consolidate your troops and attack only one territory per turn just to get a card, waiting till you get the opportunity to take a continent for yourself easily. So for example, when two other players will get into a war with each other and one of them will get destroyed. Tip number 6. Don't overguard. Be a friendly neighbor. Don't go into the arms race of which one of you has more troops on your borders. A lot of new players want to have more troops than their neighbor, even if that person is their ally, so to make sure that they wouldn't invade them. But their ally thinks in the same way. So for example, if you put 20 troops on your border, then your ally might want to make his border with 25 troops. Then you might make it 30 troops army on your border. You will both get into the arms race, you will feel threatened by each other thinking that you're planning to invade each other, and then eventually one of you will have enough of it and crush the neighboring player's army, which could cost the game for both of you. Tip number 7. Make alliances. You could even try making the alliances with everyone, as remember, the more friendly players you have towards yourself, the better for you is the diplomacy-wise. Ideally you want that other players would be more annoyed about each other than about you. This is what will make you win or lose the most of your games. But also remember that alliances are just temporary thing. By making the alliances with everyone, you just see which alliance or alliances benefit you the most, establish good relationship with those players, and eventually attack and get rid of the allies which are not needed for you anymore. Though in most cases alliance just means that you're going to be neutral towards each other as long as it benefits both of you. Lower ranked players tend to take alliances seriously, so it's good to have alliances with them because they would be attacking each other while leaving you alone. Higher ranked players know to not take alliances very seriously, but it's good to have alliance with them anyway, so you would be able to communicate with them in some way, to send attack requests, thumbs ups, thumbs downs and hearts. Tip number 8. The balance of the game. Look at the troops counter. The goal should be that none of the players would have more troops than all of the rest players combined. At this moment the balance of the game becomes broken, and if the strongest player understands that, then he could just start eliminating all of the players from the match and win the game. However, remember that sometimes the strongest in the game player could win even if he has fewer troops than the other players combined. Take into account the attacker's advantage and the cards other players have. The attackers in risk are favored, and there could be cases in which your opponent could get a super good blitz roll. Also remember that with your opponent taking somebody out, he will get those players' cards and will be able to trade them in for more troops. So general tips would be for others to team up on the player who starts getting very overpowered, to always look at the troops counter to make sure that nobody starts getting to the point in which that player has more troops than everybody else combined, and of course to avoid making attacks which could lead one of the players to have more troops than everyone else combined too. Even if you're in a big conflict with somebody, don't over-destroy each other into another player's favor. Sometimes it might just be smarter to become neutral and be with a weaker position, to get the attention off of yourself and make stronger players to fight each other. Tip number 9. Observe other players and their playing style. Try to predict their skill level. Different opponents require different playing style. The same exact move in the same board situation could be brilliant against one type opponents while absolutely the worst move against other opponents. So because of that it's really important to adapt to the situations. For example, if you see that other players are very aggressive, then you might want to be very passive, let them expand to multiple continents, get into a conflict with each other and over-destroy each other while meanwhile you would be watching the world burn and wait till you get the opportunity to take both of them out. Or in the same way, if you see that your opponents are very passive, then you could take the advantage by becoming very aggressive and holding multiple continents knowing that you won't get invaded anyway. When it comes to different skill levels, you will probably want to have less experienced players in the endgame since it should be way easier to defeat them. But sometimes there could be situations when leaving more experienced players would be more beneficial. So for example, when you see that there could be some issues towards the balance of the game when it should be sustained very precisely. Also take into account that are the other players' relationships towards you and each other. So for example, if you see that some player is being very problematic towards you, then no matter how skillful or not skillful he is, you would probably want to get rid of him more than anybody else. Or at the same time, if you see that some players are very problematic towards each other, then you might want to keep them in the endgame with yourself, while seeking to eliminate more neutral players. Tip number 10. Always plan ahead. You should know that you're going to do before your turn has even started. Turns are limited by timers, and while in a lot of cases it won't matter how slow or fast you will make your turn, from time to time there will be some turns which could be the game changers. You might get the opportunity to win the game, but if you don't plan ahead, then you could realize it too late and don't have enough time to execute it or even completely miss it. So having a clear plan on what you want and should do next, could highly improve your winning rate. Knowing these tips will highly improve your game understanding, however you might struggle to play with some continents individually. For that not to happen, click on this video in the end screen in which I will share the best risk strategies for each of the continents. These two videos combined will give you a superior advantage against other new to the game players.